Want to.
Last Wednesday.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Did a little bit.
thank you for being here. Welcome to the City Council Study Session, Tuesday, February 21st, 2023. Four items on the agenda. The first of these is a presentation of the North Base Facilities Master Plan.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. Sean O'Leary, Director of Public Works. I have with me Sarah Margaret Hendrickson from ADG and Tony Blatt from ADG Blatt. Our partners for the last year, we're going to present to you a master plan for North Base. I think you've all been to North Base, is that right? And you've all been to Lindsay Yard, so we're going to talk about Lindsay too. Tony calls this a roadmap for success. I think that's a good word for it, a purposeful plan. Really, this will be your easiest item tonight. No major decisions you have to make. We know that this plan will not be in this year's budget. It may not be in yet next year's budget. In fact, I'm resolved to say that I will be a retired Public Works Director when you build this plan. But I'm happy to, really thrilled to be here and to have worked with these folks and their team and several departments. We have multiple city departments that house their facilities, and they've been wonderful to work with. Jason is back here. Chief King, I think, was going to try to come, and several of my staff members are here who spend their days at North Base. It's really going to be fun, probably especially fun for Councilor Peacock, who kind of speaks this language, like Tony, architectural language, but we are so thrilled with the work that they've done and the plan that we have. And the only thing we'll ask for you is just your input and hopefully your endorsement of this to adopt it and maybe make it the future plan for maintenance facilities in the city. If I can, so go back to that last one. I want to mention the backdrop to this slide, one of my favorite adds to this PowerPoint slide. This is the blueprint from the U.S. Navy for building these buildings, 1952. So if that doesn't put it in perspective, we are operating out of a 71-year-old building. And you've been there, Mayor. You know how old and decrepit it is, but we make it work for a lot of our operations.
I was born in 1952. I know decrepit.
There you go. Puts it in perspective, doesn't it? So we're just going to take you through I'm going to take you through the existing conditions, going to take you on a little tour of North Base and Lindsay Yard. And then Tony is going to take you through the rest of the meat of the kind of master plan. And the Lindsay Yard, we'll get to that here in a minute, but the Lindsay Yard notion is, and the question for these guys was, could we move Lindsay Yard, which is streets and stormwater, up here? Would there be space for them? And then get rid of the Lindsay property or sell it or do something else with it? That was the question. Could that work? And I think the answer is yes, but we need some more land and we need a very clever phasing plan to make it happen. So here was we've been at this for about a year. We started back kind of through the RFQ process back in July of 21. Really jumped in with the contract award by council in October of 21. And I think we really started in our team building process in December. So about a year of process, finished it up, the draft final report, December of 22, and we've been putting together this presentation and the reports for you since that time. So about a year plus of time spent. So here's North Base, as we refer to it. Obviously, all of this real estate up here was called North Base for the Navy. You all know that history. This is our little piece of North Base. It's a 26-acre parcel, kind of an odd shape there, and all the buildings in there are occupied and actively in service every day by some department. Here are the four departments that operate there. The Department of Utilities has their line maintenance and sanitation there. Public Works has fleet, traffic control, transit, parking. Who am I missing? Who am I missing? Mike, anyone else? I think that's it. So about half of our Public Works Department operates out of this facility. And then we have fire over kind of on the left side of the screen, the Station 7, the current Emergency Operation Center, and they've got some training facilities, some training towers, and so on here. And then now, in the last year or so, Parks and Rec has moved their maintenance facility into that the new blue box. These are the two new buildings here on the bottom. The blue box is the Parks Maintenance Facility, constructed last year or occupied last year, and then the green box is our new transit and public safety maintenance building. So lots of activity, lots of staff, and lots of important services. This kind of takes us back down to Lindsay Yard. You can kind of tell there we are. This is a 5.2 acre parcel. Lots of folks think that we own all of this. We don't. That's owned by the University of Oklahoma. There's a bunch of storage of materials. Mary, you worked there for a couple, 3 years. You know the real estate really well. But we just own the 5.2 acres there in the blue boundary, and that is our street and stormwater divisions. We operate with about 52 or 53 staff members, lots of equipment, and this is where they're staging their operations. Also have a big IT presence there that most people don't know about, but our fiber network that connects all of our facilities, our 911 services, all those things, kind of has a major element in a little building on that property. We don't like to talk about that very much. It's very important. But yeah, IT gets very sensitive whenever we do anything on this real estate. Little yellow buildings are where the IT connections happen. So lots of important things happening at Lindsay Yard every day too. So back to North Base. This is that 1952 dinosaur of a building. The Navy built them well, but they probably didn't build them to last 70 years. I'm really proud of our staff. One of the things that our fleet guys do that I've gotten a kick out of since I've been here, every Friday afternoon they stop working late afternoon and everybody sweeps and mops the floor. We have the cleanest fleet facility in Oklahoma. We take a lot of pride in that, even though it's an old building. It's the best we got, so we got to keep it working for us. But this is that, on the right side of the screen is the fleet maintenance operation, about half the size it really needs to be. Really no insulation, no ventilation or proper ventilation, no energy efficiency at all. We've got asbestos in these buildings. We've got stuff lining every corner of every part of the building there, and really just not suitable for our future. It's really not suitable for the present, but it's the best we have. This is the oldest facility on North Base, and I hope the first one that gets razed to the ground and start over new. And Tony will take you through some ideas that we have for how to do that. We did a fleet management study back in 2013 just to kind of get a handle on what we kind of knew, and they confirmed it for us. The third-party fleet management firm out of Kansas City confirmed that we're about half the size we should be for a fleet our size. We're about half of what we should be. So imagine the efficiency that these guys are going through trying to work on 950 pieces of equipment up there. No vertical or not inadequate vertical clearance. We've done lots of little modifications to make this space work. No drive-through bays. That's kind of a no-no. You really need a drive-through bay in a fleet facility. We don't have any in this facility. So lots of things. And this building probably wasn't really set up for what we do in it. We just make it work. So you can kind of see just the old nature of the building. Everything is old, no insulation. It's a very cold building in the winter. You don't want to be working in there without a coat in the winter, and then in the summer we have fans that try to cool it down. It helps a little bit. Again, not enough storage. Systemized organization is really not even existing there. We find hodgepodge methods of storage. Here is my favorite Quonset hut that our Port Traffic Control Group operates out of, and that probably was built in 1950 or so, back when they built Quonset huts in the Navy. Can't believe it's still standing, but we store all of our signs and other equipment for our traffic control group out of there. We're back to Lindsay here, I think, and again, Lindsay Yard's a little newer. Been doing a little research. This transition from South Base. Mary, did you ever work at South Base?
I did.
Okay,
I worked.
So South Base was kind of where the weather center is, or just north of there. And my folks describe it as a big, ugly green building that leaked like a sieve. They had to put buckets out. When Mike started as a mechanic there, we had buckets on top of vehicles just to catch the rain. It was an awful building. We moved from South Base to North Base, and we were excited about it. From an 80-year-old building to a 70-year-old building. But in the meantime, we also acquired Lindsay Yard, which is that 5.2 acre parcel. And I don't know all the story, but because it happened back in like 92, 93, and then the move happened, I think, in 99. So they moved a bunch of the public works operations from South Base, partly to Lindsay Yard and partly to North Base.
And I designed the building that's sitting there, not that, Doug did that.
Okay.
In the building that's next to it.
Yeah, so, and you saw that demolition. I think the salt shed and salt storage, which is really not adequate for salt storage, it's really not appropriate. You're not going to see that in most public works operations anywhere. We need to do better with that. But I think that was the first thing that went in here. We used it kind of as a staging yard and then eventually built the buildings for people to be there and occupy that space. And it's not bad. It's a little bit better than North Bay. It's a little bit newer. Joe Hill over here, our street program manager, is sitting in with us. But a little bit newer, but again, the concept is, or the question really for Tony and Sarah Margaret and their team was, is it possible to take everything that's there and move it all in one campus on North Base? And the answer generally is yes. It's tricky, but the answer is yes. This is our back to North Base here. We got all of our CNG operations. We're very proud of our CNG program. These are all the CNG vehicles that fuel overnight. That's really important to keep that intact, and so Tony will speak to how he designed around that. But really inefficient circulation of vehicles here. Every time I go to North Base, you've got to have your head on a swivel. There's lots of things happening there. We need better parking for city vehicles, for our employees' vehicles. Again, really no systemized circulation. We just make it work. It's like just any old facility that you make it work and you get your job done with the best you have, but really not suitable for the future. Love this one. That's actually a current picture. Just to keep tile on the floor is hard when you're that old, and the floor in that kind of shape, and the walls, and again, ventilation, circulation system. It's just not, this is not the kind of place we want our employees to work, and we can do better, but it's going to take some time and money, and we'll get into that here in a minute. This is actually our break room that we share with our line maintenance group and do a lot of meetings in there. We just mentioned that, and Tony will probably speak to it, but one of the really neat things about this, we included, goodness, I bet we had 100 employees at some point throughout the process from those 4 departments that all were meeting together and sharing with Tony and Sarah Margaret what's really happening and how they use this space and what they need for that space. And really a wonderful collaboration between 4 departments and a really great design team to figure out where are you today, what are you doing today, what doesn't work, what does work, and how can we bring that together, particularly with the merging of Lindsay Yard into a North Base operation and all the things that are happening there. And Tony did a wonderful job listening. He's a great listener, so is Sarah Margaret, and I think you'll be impressed with the outcome of what they found. And this is just one of those times when we had folks together. They came on site. We had meetings in here, multiple meetings, lots of really great discussion, and lots of really good discussion among departments. Each department has their own view of what we do for you and for the citizens, and we all have a different job to do, but we sort of do it in the same spaces, and we have to find a way to get along and make that space work.
Wonderful ceiling tile.
Yeah, I love the asbestos ceiling tile. Okay, I'm going to hand off to Tony. He's going to take you through the real brains of this operation.
Thank you. So what we were tasked with doing in trying to find out if we could get all of these functions onto a single piece of property was also in analyzing and really taking a hard look at how do people ingress and egress come onto the property and go off. What are we talking about? Vehicles that are going to be coming that are going to be maintenanced. We've got large vehicles that are being utilized for different aspects of your operations. We've got people who are going to be coming in and out to work, and we've got individuals who are coming in and out of the site from a visiting standpoint or from a vendor standpoint. How do all of those things interact to where we do not have crossing of equipment or crossing of vehicles or crossing of people and equipment or vehicles in a way that's not safe or inefficient? Then when we got into the buildings, we also took a really hard look at, do we have any redundant functions? Anything that each particular department has the same function, and if we can join those together in a way that we can have a larger one that everybody can come and utilize and share, whether it's large locker rooms, large break rooms, very large meeting rooms that everybody could utilize. That doesn't currently exist, but could be leveraged as a part of this overall. So that was looked at with respect to how the internal spaces were viewed. We were tasked not only with trying to see if we could look at how these spaces were going to work as a joined operations on a single site, but also track out what will this look like in 10 years, what will it look like in 20 years, and what will it look like in 30 years. When you got out at 30 years and you tracked growth of your staff and growth of the equipment and vehicles that were going to be on the site, that's whenever we really started having to take a hard look at the amount of property that was available, and did we need to try and find a way to leverage adjacent property so that you've got a long-range plan that's viable, not something that you need to pull the trigger on immediately, but you can start planning for it, and that's what we'll show you as we go into this. So we met together, we overlaid trace paper, we sat there and sketched out different block diagrams of this function operates in this much space. Fleet maintenance was an excellent example because we knew exactly how much was being used currently, and we knew that it was half the size that it needed to be. And when you started to line out, okay, this is how big this is going to be to operate efficiently, it showed us how it was going to fit on the site, how it was going to align, and how it was going to work with respect to vehicle traffic and parking. Parking ended up being the tipping point with respect to additional land that we really had to consider as we were going forward. So the down at the bottom, that was one of the initial diagrams that we created with all of the different functions, space to where we could put Lindsay Yard and North Base in the current land that was in between Goddard and Flood and Da Vinci. Could we actually get it all to fit? And it got wedged in there so tight, but we didn't have parking and growth accommodated. So we could make it work, but we couldn't make it work 10 years out, 20 years out, 30 years out. So we had to take a hard look at how we were going to achieve that. We did, like was being said, we did have some initial meetings and some presentations, both to show what we had identified and what we had uncovered, but also the ability for us to get some pretty hard questions asked back to us, and so that we could respond and fold those questions and those comments into our final design. If at any point in time there's a question during this, don't hesitate.
They will.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead and go to the next one.
Yeah.
So,
And I do have one.
Yes, sir.
In one of your considerations, going back to the Navy, one of the things we learned in the Navy on December 7th, 1941 was never concentrate everything in one place in case of a disaster. Well, that's kind of what we're doing here. Had you thought that through? I mean, the probability's way low, but
we were looking to try and see if we could maximize efficiency and trying to see if we could take care of departmental redundancies. So we weren't looking at spreading out and creating, because if we felt like if we were to try and make two a satellite, a primary and a satellite, we would start to build back in those redundancies. So we were looking to see if we could be efficient. And again, the good thing about this plan is that it's a roadmap for you to look at going forward, but it's going to have to be visited on an incremental basis to see what is it still in alignment with our values? Is it still in alignment with our culture? When we think about 20 years ago, what technology was, if we think about 20 years ago, what that incoming employee would have looked like and what an incoming employee looks like today, it's vastly different. So we're setting this up so that never at any point in time is a future council going to say, what should we do next? We don't know. Let's start to think about it. You can always pull this document back out and give yourself a point of reference, a benchmark, and then hopefully this document will evolve. It'll have an amendment, it'll have something that'll supplement it so that you are always using it to leverage the best efficiency and the best use of the resources that the city has.
thank you, sir.
Yeah. So this is an overall view of where we ended up in the end, and we'll go through and we'll show. But this shows also land that is south of your current property, land that's currently owned by the University of Oklahoma. And the idea is that that land, so we hired a group to come in and do land acquisition values to give us an idea of what these appraised costs would be. Told us that the land that's immediately south would be valued today at about $1.7 million. The land at Lindsay Yard was valued at about $1.4 million. It's not; these aren't numbers that are going to be acted on immediately, but it gives you a point of reference with respect to if we're going to be pursuing this land, so that we have the ability to purposefully plan out a long-range 30-year goal. then there'll be some kind of an idea of when do we need to pull the trigger on this? When do we need to go ahead and start thinking about acquiring this property? And it might be something that when OU shows an interest in the Lindsay Yard property, that might be the time in which you can have that discussion with them of, okay, it won't be the first time that something like this has occurred.
Councilmember?
So if I'm understanding you correctly, this area in orange is owned by the university?
Yes.
Okay, so we have an opportunity if we so need, since the Lindsay Yard is so close to all of the other OU property, in negotiation in
Right.
the future. Okay, just wanted to
You
understand.
can leverage the knowledge as you see fit.
I meant to mention, I'm sorry, Tony.
Yeah.
I meant to mention earlier, you may not know this, again, just point of reference, Flood Street is here on the right side of the screen, and that is a city street. For most of its lifetime, it was Highway 77 business, and the council took ownership of that about 10 years ago. So that's a city street that we own and maintain. This other one over here is called Goddard Avenue. That is a university street. We do not maintain it, we do not own it, there's no right-of-way there. That is one of those streets, and they own many streets around the campus. They own all the other streets at North Base except this one that is on our campus.
I have a bad habit of talking with my hands, but this, I'm going to leverage it a little bit. This particular little connection point does not exist.
Okay.
But one of the things that we felt that was important when we were looking at your large vehicles and how things operate is that if somebody needed to get out onto Flood and go north or south, it's very difficult to go north coming off of Flood at this location. But if we would connect on that western boundary, we can make a right turn, hit the light, and head north. That would give you two ways of exiting in the event that something needed to be addressed. You could do so in a fashion that would be a little more efficient, and you're not crossing traffic then. The idea being that the large vehicles stay on the perimeter. They could go in and out here, go in and out here, and you're not getting into the area where you have vendors, your employees coming in and out. That would be the idea, is that you don't get those in your vehicles in that area.
Councilmember?
Is the street, so Goddard, suitable for our heavy vehicles? So like maintained appropriately for us to be able to access?
Great question.
That road?
Yes, it is, but to Tony's point, in order to do that thing that he just pointed out, that connection, which we think is wonderful, wonderful idea, we would have to get permission from the University of Oklahoma. That's why we don't have it today. It's a private road owned by the university. We've respectfully not accessed that road because it's their road, and we didn't need it, frankly. But for this plan, we would need their permission. And they may want to come back and negotiate some maintenance.
Well, I was wondering, would it take over? Yeah.
And that's okay, maybe it's time to do that. We do own and operate the intersection, and we own and operate the signal at Rock Creek and Flood and Goddard. So that would make sense, we've just never entered that negotiation.
Would you advise that we do enter that prior to speaking about this, or that we just leave it up to Appleseed?
Yeah, great question, Mayor. At the end of this, we're going to kind of lay out sort of next steps.
Okay.
We think the next steps are to meet with the university and start having this conversation about 13 and a half acres down here. Do they have plans for that? And to talk about Goddard and just any other impacts of this master plan. We intentionally have not done that. We wanted to bring it to you first.
I would agree, and the thing is instead of us just doing maintenance, it would be nice if we could transfer the property. Because when you've got a dump truck with a backhoe on the back and pull out into traffic, it can get wild. And so that signalized intersection will make that safer for the employees and for our drivers, just regular drivers. Councilmember?
So currently have the CNG station and Fire Station 7 face Goddard Avenue, and that's the access. So it seems there is some precedent for the university letting us use Goddard. And because of that, wouldn't be unreasonable that we would be contributing to the maintenance of the street, especially since we're using it for fire trucks right now. And does Da Vinci Street currently connect through all the way, or is there something blocking it?
It's
It
possible.
actually kind of meanders
Yeah,
from the fire station into a parking lot, so technically it's not a through road. And when we did the development for the transit center and the park maintenance facility, this had never been platted, so we wanted to follow our own development standards. So the city council agreed to approving the plat for this property. And when you did that, Da Vinci was left as a private road owned by the city. So it's sort of an access road to our facility. We don't want it to be a through street. We want it to be accessible only to the city facilities.
Good, cool, thanks.
Did you want to highlight the features of the master plan?
Sure. So, just to walk through, so what we're going to walk through in individual phases, but the concept is that all of the fueling that's currently going on down here gets centralized into that one spot where all the fueling happens, both petroleum and natural gas. The current large vehicle, slow fuel CNG would stay in its current space, but we would relocate some of the smaller vehicles and get it around the perimeter. And then we would also integrate some covered parking for vehicles that are going to be fleet vehicles that we want to make sure that we protect, and the ability also to have some electric recharging stations for vehicles in spaces throughout the property. There's a large overhead electrical line that we're talking about relocating in that location. We think we're going to set up a spot where we can have a bank of generators that could eventually take care of the entire facility in the event that there was something in power went down. Fleet maintenance is all here with a wing that is drive-through, and one of the biggest components of this is there's a central space that is able to pull all of the vehicles into it. It's the drive-through space that's undercover. And in the event that there's an ice storm or some kind of bad weather, rather than pulling those vehicles into the service bays, which is happening both here and at Lindsay Yard, you can pull them into that area that's not service bays. Service bays can remain active. All those vehicles can get outside of the inclement weather, and then you can leverage that for use. One of the other things that we did was we tried to make sure that every single group had a welding component to it. Every single group had a small parts component to it. Every group had one of the biggest things, and we've got in a couple of spots, every group needed storage. And they had storage in places where storage didn't belong. It was impacting their ability to work. And we felt like a large central warehouse that could be accessed by all the different departments might be something that could be considered on a long-range plan. That was the one component that does not exist currently. But we've got a couple of spots where that might end up residing. We feel like that's going to open up a lot of bandwidth for people to not have to deal with, well, this is being stored here. It's not mine, but I have the real estate for it to live, so it's here. If I could get rid of it, it would be great. So that was one of the items that was going to happen. Building maintenance had a new building that we had here. That's currently on the plan adjacent to parks. This building, although shown in blue, is actually coming out of the ground in the next couple of months. That's the new wash bay. We had relocation of the fire tower, which is in this current spot here. We had some additional storage for fire. That was part of their plan, and then additional infrastructure for fire with respect to this building right here as well. Down, we get on the south side and we kind of start looking at the items that were coming in from Lindsay Yard, although we're thinking that this is part of the long-range growth. So this is salt storage. And salt storage was intended to be, one, sized appropriately, so that's double the size that it is now to handle the capacity needed for the city, but also the way that the salt is stored and loaded is something that's causing the loading time to be twice what it is needed to be. So if we could just get loading on two different levels to where you're loading directly into the vehicle, we were told that would cut down the loading time in half.
It would.
We also,
Yes, ma'am.
I was just gonna ask Sean, I saw that Oklahoma City is looking at like beet juice as an alternative. Is that something that we still feel needs to be doubled in size? If we're-
Yeah, great
Are we
question.
staying with salt forever?
We've all been joking about the beet juice experiment.
That's great.
It's a fascinating thing. I've never heard.
Good for the environment,
I've been doing
erosion?
snow and ice control for 40 years. I never heard of it until this
Yeah.
year. So, great concept. We're watching it. They're watching it. They're playing with it. Just an idea. That won't change the storage of salt. That will accelerate the ability for the salt to work on the road. But beet juice just extends the freezing temperature down a bit. So that would be something we might build into this to be able to add
Okay.
an admixture like that.
The city also does a lot of brine production as well. Oh, sorry,
yep.
Tony, you
Go ahead.
can continue. So that building also houses brine production and storage as well.
And the idea is that also, whenever you're thinking about how people are gonna come in and out, that you could line up vehicles to go through and not get them back into the North Base area. So if you had a need to have trucks that are lined up to go through, we could stage them in a fashion that would be efficient and it's not impacting the rest of the operations on the side. Kind of that large section of land that is being utilized, but that it's University of Oklahoma property to the south of Lindsay Yard, that was kind of what we were setting up here. And the idea was that it would be very orderly in how it's done, not only with how it's stored, but also how it's accessed. So this would be storage for topsoil, aggregate, if anything that's currently down stored in the south side of Lindsay Yard, you'd be able to store in this area. Here, this little section of building here and this building here were actually additional storage areas for Parks and Rec. Even though the Parks and Rec building is brand new, one of the things that was identified was some additional storage would really be beneficial, especially with the way that.
Christmas stuff.
Exactly, that's currently down.
Usually one slide.
So then we also had, this was one of the areas we were talking about, it could be one of those large central warehouses, and then also we had street markets, is that correct?
I think additional workspace.
Yeah, additional work base. We had some large, and again, additional parking was one of the big things that we were noticing, that we needed parking for employee vehicles, that if we were to utilize the space on the existing North Bay site, it was not accommodating the amount of parking that was needed for not only the initial 10-year plan, but also all the way out to 30 years. What additional items have I not mentioned?
The bottom right would also be lay down space for larger items for traffic, like light pole bases. Basically, their lay down space was where the new sanitation building is now currently, and so they're having to look for alternative methods right now to have those be stored and staged. And so that basically the southern portion is all bulk material storage and large item lay down space and equipment staging.
And are we talking aggregate top on that, or are we talking hard top?
Again, those are
We have
the kinds of things that are going to evolve there. Obviously, we'd always prefer to have paved, weather-resistant surfaces, but as this site evolves, I suspect you're going to have some gravel surface areas and others, and it's going to take 10 or 20 years to build this whole master plan.
And track vehicles is what I'm thinking of, is track vehicles eating up the pavement because they're terrible. Yes, ma'am?
As we're talking about gravel, that's a lot of concrete. So I'm sure that there's a stormwater plan within this. I'm wondering if those are detention.
So this one is existing, and the idea is that we're going to supplement as well. One thing is the current site is almost entirely impervious. So we realized that we needed to at least create an equal amount with what we're planning on doing. Whether or not, how that's going to actually engineer out is something that we haven't established yet.
Just always need to be thoughtful.
Following on that same point, could we explore the idea of underground detention so that we could recapture more of the site for actual buildings?
It's definitely there and available to you. I don't know if you've got, I should know this, is there stormwater that's adjacent to this that you could get out
In
into?
Bud Street, yeah.
Okay. It's just
That
a
would be
lot.
an option,
It would be,
Councilmember.
it's there and it's available, and if the building is the most critical use of the site, then yes, that can be done.
Appreciate that.
It is a cost component.
Sure.
That's definitely.
1.4 million.
We do have areas where we've got electric recharging station in several spaces on the site. And the idea is basically that we just make sure that we've accommodated not only the current needs, growth of the current needs, parking for growth of the current needs, in a way that we can show a plan, and then now we'll show what we would say is a path. And it's not that this is the only path, because we actually looked at several different options. So first is we're thinking about relocating the current fuel islands. They've kind of reached the limit of their life. So something would need to be done with them, whether this was part of the plan or not. We're saying, go ahead and move it up to the north corner to the tip. And that way, all fueling is handled in one single spot. So we would move petroleum fueling up to next to the natural gas, and that way, then we would also take care. This would remain basically the way it is. This is the current infrastructure for large vehicle, slow fuel natural gas. And then down this edge, we would do all of the smaller vehicle slow fuel natural gas. But the idea is, again, if we're taking all of the traffic around the property, we're not taking it into this, which is currently the way that it goes. There's a lot of internal crossing of traffic. The idea also is that if somebody's gonna come in to have their vehicle serviced, they come in, they drop their vehicle off, and they exit out the front. They're not going through bays, they're not trying to have conversations, they're not interacting or interrupting the service flow that needs to occur with the technicians and all of your staff. So the idea is very simple and purposeful way of working around the property. And still, we ended up also, your large vehicle storage, that we knew that was a big thing. So we wanted to make sure that they had places on site that they could be positioned independent of just being stored in the slow fuel lanes. And then the Goddard access.
Yeah.
Right off the bat, if we could get that, I think it's going to be a safer ingress and egress throughout the property. So that was one of the things that we said, that's a good phase one item while all of your paving is going.
And where are you going to store dead vehicles in there? Or
So we're thinking that we have not only dead vehicles, but also vehicles that are going to be for auction. The idea is if we can get those vehicles out of the way, especially the ones that are for auction, because the auction vehicles seem to be the one that, oh, we need a part.
Or
We can
two.
go get it off of, and then now that vehicle's not really ready to go to auction. So we were thinking auction vehicles are way far away from the standard maintenance operations and get those out of here. So this.
And secured.
This would basically be work in progress, done line, and vehicles that are going to be maintenance.
And pretty.
I just said, and it was secured.
And it's secure as well. Got a large overhead power line that's
Sorry, before we move on, the cost on the bottom, is that scoping out what it would cost in 2023, 2033, 2053? Like, what are the, is it just saying like it's
So-
going to exponentially increase?
right. So we're
Yeah.
talking about today's dollars, a range. So our cost consultant gave us, a low range, a high range based on current cost. And this is kind of at the tail end of cost escalation, so these are pretty recent numbers. If you waited until 2033, that's what these dollars are.
Oh.
Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. And then
Could I
they're
ask
also out
a
20.
similar question? Okay, so is this saying the total cost for the whole project right now? This is phase one.
This is phase
Yeah,
one.
this is the cost of phase one. If we went to-
That's cost of phase one.
There are 10 phases. Brace yourself.
Phase two.
So your overhead power line is basically splitting the property in half and inhibiting the ability to leverage this property with building space centralized that allows you then to work around it with respect to vehicles and work it from the south side with respect to ingress and egress. So we felt immediately addressing that might be going down, that might be rerouting. The exact routing wasn't necessarily established, but we knew the overhead lines of power problem that needs to come in. Also taking the opportunity to create a spot where we could have hookups, maybe one large generator initially, and a bank of hookups for future generators. So critical functions maybe day one, but set up to where you could incrementally budget for them to where eventually you could have maybe full buildings that are on.
And you're talking like 60K generators, big.
Big,
Yeah.
like large data center on day tanks or tied in natural gas or in some fashion that you've got them. The ability also to put in maybe that first electric vehicle charging station. So you've got, start to implement that and test it, see if it gets good leverage and gets good traction with respect to the vehicles that you're going to be implementing.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm just gonna say this to Sean. I think that we should probably think about doing this quickly. I mean, I'm just looking at the amount that it's gonna cost over time. And we're talking a lot about, overhead power lines and lots of other projects. I don't know that we can move forward really with a quality configuration. So if we could just, think about getting this out of the way sooner rather than later.
In fact, probably the only thing in the current budget that we have submitted as a Public Works Department, whether it makes it through the process or not, is that existing unleaded and diesel fuel station is on its last leg. It's very serious, it's very safety oriented concern, and it's not going to last much longer. Mike's really spends a lot of time worrying about it out there. So that's already requested for, what is that, about 2 million, Mike?
2.5.
2.5. So that's the biggest part of this number, is moving the fueling facility up to that central location. You're going to have to either fix it where it is, or you're going to have to move it. So if you're going to do that, let's move it.
Yeah, do we put a
makes
Band-Aid on
sense.
another bridge,
No.
or do we build a new bridge?
And it's a
Yeah.
great example, Counselor, I appreciate that question. A great example of what Tony said maybe a couple times is that this is a purposeful plan. It will live with us for years. I would love to see all of this built next year. I know better. It took me 15 years to move into Building D. 15 years to build that thing. That's a $5 million project. So this is not going to happen overnight. But having the plan, if you let us adopt this, and we have a fueling facility that has to be fixed, and you've got to find the money in the capital budget, we follow this plan to fix it, instead of just sort of making it up.
Yeah, appreciate that.
I'm going to speak a little faster.
Okay,
Just
yeah.
to be purposeful of everybody's time as well. I don't want to,
Thank you.
realize you've got a lot to
That's-
explain tonight.
You got us all excited with this idea.
But
Thank you.
I'm here until you're finished with it. So, now we've cleared out that utility corridor, and we've opened up a patch of ground that is basically, it's bordered by parking on the northeast and northwest, and then the existing building on the south. And the idea is now we can drop a building in, and we can start to actually make some progress with respect to fleet maintenance. Actually get them into a space that's got the right size bays, got the right height bays, got the right, all the right fit and finish on the insides, where it's functioning exactly the way that it should be functioning, but just basically to handle today's operations, not 30 years of growth. But we can go ahead and handle that with one single bag that's got the ability to drive in and drive out. The things that we were talking about are important about making this a very safe way of operating. Oh, and so then, partial demolition of the existing building, the part that isn't being used currently, so that what we can do is then we can add in this bay for, additional bays for sign maintenance, for traffic and sign, because that's gonna basically displace the buildings that they were in previously. Again, so this is fleet maintenance, this is that new set of bays for traffic, and this is that portion of the existing building that we've removed.
I think it goes without saying, but the point here is that we can't just stop working. We have nowhere else to go. So if we build this project, you have to build it while everyone is still working out there. You still have to fix the vehicles, you still have to do the snow and ice. So what Tony is describing is this process of taking bits and pieces of each building while the rest of the building is still working.
We're trying not to displace anyone until they have a place to go. So we'll build something, we'll move them in, we'll take something away, we'll build something, we'll move them in, then we'll take something away. So in the next phase, now that we've taken care of these, we realize that this might be multi-phase, this might be a multi-stage project because of just cost or how it's going to be done. But we're going to build in that area between the two buildings that's going to allow for all of that inclement weather, bringing in vehicles. It's also going to be the drive out, so that we're driving through. We're going to expand. Now this is 30 years of growth for fleet maintenance. That first part was just covering their day-to-day operations of today. This is the growth, and this becomes all of the administrative operation. And we're thinking that all of the administration for all 4 departments starts to live in this building in some capacity. So we've got a really great large break room, we've got a really great large set of locker rooms, and we've got basically we have a facility that's indicative and really respectful of the different departments and how we can use them and how they can collaborate together. So we've got anything that was a redundant element, we're trying to reuse it or join it together. Also, another one of those electric vehicle charging stations that we thought we could bring in and leverage while we're doing this effort. The next one. And then, so this is showing the phases of that big area. We can do an administrative wing. Again, we had still kept this building in place. Previous one showed a build out, but this one is the incremental parts. Part of the administration wing and getting all of the parking, basically rounding out all of the pavement associated with the overall master plan. The next one. So This is on your plan currently for building maintenance, to have a new building, so that, to get them into something that is what they need, and also kind of decouple them from all of the storage that's currently in their building. So that's that, and then this particular wing was an additional storage area for Parks and Rec, to give them the things that are going to allow them to do their growth. We also realized that we had to relocate the fire training tower over to this side, and especially since this building is coming online. Before this building can be built, the fire training tower is going to have to be relocated. This is showing basically the entire expansion of the fire facilities, all of the elements that are going to be needed, whether it is storage or additional maintenance and storage for the fire department. The idea is that whole area becomes their little campus within this entire building. So this is, we discussed it, so we've got all of the parking associated with the auction lot, the items that are going to be anything that needs to be stored and secured. You've got the ability to do that with respect to these. You've got salt storage, you've got all the bulk material storage, the other storage area that's associated with parks maintenance, with parks, and then lay down yard for poles and anything that was restricted street and sign, and then additional parking as well. And then setting this area up for future buildings as well, which is this building. So this is that large additional work bays, but also you're going to have an operational warehouse building that could be something that's centrally located for everybody to take advantage of. We did pick up some additional electric vehicle charging stations, and then, but the idea was that still administrative functions for these elements is still up in that large administration building. So the idea is that we're going to still try to centralize administration in a way that takes advantage of any redundant elements and makes it efficient for people to work.
Is land acquisition built into this phase, your land acquisition for low use?
It is not.
No.
No, it's just construction. But that for this phase is everything with that building. It's not just that building. If you notice the cost difference between phase 9 and phase 10, it's just with the building or without.
Right, same phase. This extra cost is just this element added to it. So
Yes.
it's two phases. And I believe the next slide is going to be
All of it.
basically all the phases tracked out. This is that one that's the humbling slide, when you talk about the costs way out. But also gives you an idea of how to plan for it with respect to the resources that you might want to budget in the immediate years and then in the near future. What are you wanting to accomplish?
I mean, you'll still be on council in 2053, Stephen. So what do you want to deal with when it comes?
Notice that last letter is B.
Yeah, that's a bit bigger.
10 times, 10 times.
It's a little shocking, I know. I've had time to get over it, and you're just seeing it for the first time. But something I really appreciate about these folks is, and frankly, we don't have a track record of doing this very well in the city. You know that most of our Norman Forward projects are coming in well over. Our EOC is coming in twice as high as the estimates. And something that cities don't do well, and I think we're doing it much better here, is being realistic about actual cost of these things. So we're giving you a real good number. Hopefully, we can always do better than this if you go out to a bid. But and we also are giving you a 20-year horizon. We know that this is not going to happen overnight, but it is a little shocking that these things never get cheaper. They get really, really expensive. And Sarah Margaret made the point early on that, as we talk about SEC readiness and all that, you're going to need more public works. You're going to need more parks. You're going to need more fire. You're going to need more utilities. We're not getting any smaller. And we're not going to last in a 72-year-old building.
No.
We've got to do this sometime. I don't know how, and you don't have to decide that tonight, but I hope that you'll at least accept this as a really great plan. Appreciate the work of these folks, and it's a plan that we can be very purposeful about and start to implement over time.
Frankly, just from me speaking, I think it's brilliant. It's absolutely moved well. So, Councilmember.
Yeah, quick question. I guess this is for city manager, maybe Anthony. Whenever the infrastructure bill comes out, whenever $1.6 trillion, do we anticipate that money could be used for something like this? Because it's really closely tied to infrastructure.
Yeah, I don't know if we've seen much detail come out. I know there'll be an emphasis on roads, bridges, airports, rail infrastructure. In terms of those public spaces that are required to provide services, I don't think we've seen anything that.
Anything for municipal infrastructure. It's not
Yeah,
really-
that's the thing, every one of us, that we each have different news feeds that we follow every morning. Number one thing we're looking for is the first hint at what infrastructure rules look like. So we'll keep you posted. Having a plan in place, should it become available, is the first step in being competitive for those dollars.
Absolutely. Appreciate that.
And did you have a question?
Well, more of a statement, I guess.
Okay.
I just want to say thank you for bringing this to us and the work that y'all have done, because I know how much our staff has appreciated the 2 new buildings that we have on North Base, and I was there when we did the dedication for those things, and I think it's really important for us to consider our working conditions for our really hardworking staff that have to deal with a lot of stuff. We pinch a lot of pennies, and we are not fully staffed in the way that we need to be. And I think having a master plan for our maintenance, all of these different kind of components, is really important for us to be an attractive workplace. So this is not just about us being able to do our job, but to be able to support the staff that is here. And so I think, I'm just really glad to see us thinking really long-term and strategically about what we're doing. So thank you.
Councilmember.
Definitely support going forward, establishing this as a long-range plan for the area. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think this just helps further illustrate to Norman residents that putting off stuff like this just means it gets way more expensive. So we can say, well, it's expensive, we can't afford it now. Well, 10 times increase in the next 30 years is difficult as well. So we got to figure out a way to address these issues now, because you're right, they're not. In my 10 years on council, I haven't seen anything get cheaper to build. So I think it's a good idea, a good use of the space up there. And I agree with the mayor's comments about concerns of having everything in one spot, potentially if something goes wrong. But I think it does make sense in some cases. And so I support going forward with this plan as it is and evolving it along the way. Thanks.
Thank you for presenting all that. And it looks like the next steps are adopting the plan, acquiring the land. And I'm kind of curious about the exploring financing options. So could bonds be a part of it, or just?
Yeah, great example. And Councilor Peacock's question is a classic example of who knows what the next federal grant opportunity might be. General obligation bonds are common here. This is a big number. I don't know that Norman's had a lot of success with GO bonds for city facilities, frankly, certainly not in recent times. And this isn't very glamorous. This isn't very sexy. I don't know what Norman voters are going to think about a public works facility for $75 million. So I think it's going to be a combination or a blend, a hybrid of all those things, Councilor. That's what my gut tells me.
Do you see a year we might be voting on a bond? Should we be thinking about it in the next 2 years?
You've got a lot to
3
think about.
years?
You've got water rates, you've got bridge problems, and you've got buildings. So that you're going to have to kind of sort out those things yourselves. We're here to help you. And I just appreciate having this plan available for further consideration. This is the kind of thing that you will, I hope, talk about every year during budget. Is this the year we build the public works facility, take down a 7-year-old building? Is this a year we build the fire? Maybe there is a fire grant for public safety that we access. So I don't think it's going to be as easy as going out to one bond issue. My gut tells me that's not going to be the way Norman gets this one done. But it's going to be a series of opportunities that you all will have, or future councils will have, to do this in phases, which is why these guys were so thoughtful about designing it so it can be done in phases.
If it stays on your list of priorities, it stays on our list of priorities, and that's the thing we always keep our eyes on the horizon for. So we are hearing consensus that this is a priority of council.
Anybody opposed to it? Oh, yeah, there you go.
Thank you. We'll bring it back on the future council agenda, just as a resolution adopting this, so it's kind of memorialized, and then that will give us a chance to begin to have conversations with the University of Oklahoma folks.
Has that been breached yet with Brian?
Just, Daryl and I were in a meeting last week that it just sort of stumbled into the conversation, but not formally. We wanted to bring it to you first and then have a conversation with them.
They're working their airport master plan and all the rest of that, of course, and so this would, particularly that L-shaped strip of whatever acres it is, 13.3 acres, it'd be a good time to get it on the map.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Now's the time to do it, especially with that airport master plan coming. They've got a lot of needs coming up.
I'll send out the election calendar that shows you all the things that was talked about at retreat, and since then with staff about what you have coming up with water and bridge maintenance and sewer and, yeah.
Thanks, Brenda.
Never a shortage.
Yeah, buzzkill on that one.
Sorry.
It's all hanging out there.
I'm just going to mention real quick that in terms of acquiring the land, I think a land swap makes a lot of sense because
yeah.
it's the two parcels. I mean, we've got something they might want. We've got something they've got something we want. It would create about a $300,000 delta, which might be just enough to get Goddard and repair that road and just lump it all into one.
And it's in good shape now. Last time I drove down there was about a week ago and didn't notice any great crunches in the bottom of my shocks. So, but putting those pieces of heavy equipment over that road, I don't know if it's a 6-inch road or not.
I think it's just asphalt, so it's not.
We'll have to do some exploration.
It'll destroy it.
Yeah, it will.
But it'll be better. But I do notice that Mike gets his office before Streets does. Always. Thank you all for presenting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Mary Elizabeth's having a hard stop at 7. Can we, who did you have?
Want to shift?
Lose our consultant at 7. If we can shift. We're going to take 3, 4, 5 minutes and swap. Our consultants on the comp plan have a hard stop at 7, so we're going to.
6:30, let's start up again.
Are you ready to go? Got your thumb drive?
I sent my presentation to
Oh, good. Yep.
Creeping up on you. Apologize.
Lisa, I think we're gonna swap. They're gonna let
We've got
her
a
go
hard
next.
stop
No,
it
Staff
is-
funeral. Carla.
You want
All
to
right,
slide that
let's-
chair out of the way, not the computer, your chair, that chair, yeah. Move it over to the edge. There you go.
Wasn't it like, I just can't.
Let's come back into order, and this is item number 3 on our agenda list, but it's moving up to 2. And it's discussion regarding the appointments for the Comprehensive Plan Ad Hoc Committee and Strongtown Ad Hoc Committee. And just as a prelude to that, Mary Elizabeth is our contractor for this, and she had an idea that expands my thinking quite a bit, and I think it's a very good plan. Just from the beginning, we discussed it last night, and I think it works well. So let her present it to you and see what you think.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. As Mayor Heichel had just mentioned, my name is Mary Elizabeth Mock, and I work for Garver, here, a local engineering firm. We were graciously selected by this selection committee to head up the Norman Comprehensive Plan. And so RDG is a partnering teammate of ours, and they are really experts in comprehensive plans and delivering housing analysis and so much of the strategic aspects of this. And so we understand those local dynamics. We're here locally. We've been in Norman for 20 years and in the state for over 30. And so we have a lot of the ideas about what's going on, the boots on the ground, and they also bring a wonderful national perspective. And so I think one of the other nice things that they bring to the table is they've worked for several SEC communities or emerging SEC communities. And so they have a bit of experience when it comes to how we plan for a community that is entering in a real new opportunity for the community. So that's just a little bit about RDG and the Garver team. I wanted to bring up the Norman Water Reclamation Facility. You might have heard of that before. When we completed that, and we're working on an indirect reuse pilot, and Councilwoman Grant did the tour and got to drink some of the wastewater with us. So I have a picture of you, yes, and I love it. We got a first taste together, and so anyways, it's just something that, it's funny when Mr. O'Leary was talking about the master plan not being very sexy. Well, I deal in wastewater, so I can identify. So anyways, that talked about your roadmap. We're here to talk about a playbook. But one of the first things we talk about when we're looking at the Norman Comprehensive Plan is truly how expansive it is. So I mentioned our teaming partner, RDG, who's been doing this for 30 plus years. Even they have said it's been one of the first times that they've seen a comprehensive plan that is truly so comprehensive. So we're looking at a comprehensive plan that includes the housing market and affordability strategy, a comprehensive transportation master plan update, stormwater, sanitation, water, wastewater, and that all rolls up underneath the comprehensive plan. So we have a lot of things going on here. So when we think about what makes a comprehensive plan successful, we think about many goals. And together, the people in this room, as well as the people that will be providing staff input, as well as those in the community, we have a playbook that needs to provide a win for the community and its future. So we want to produce something, one, that is going to be realistically visionary. So we want to be realistic, but we still want to be visionary. Two, we want to be able to build consensus. We all know how when we are divergent in things that we tend to be fractionary instead of building. And so we want to make sure that we are positive and we are moving forward together to build consensus for the community. And then also we want this to be useful. We want it to be visionary, we want to build consensus, and we want it to be useful. And we want to do that together as a group. So when we thought about how we're going to do this to accomplish these goals, an effective steering committee is absolutely critical to the success of this Norman Comprehensive Plan, this plan for 2045. And so when we take a look at this, we've got, of course, the master plan, the comprehensive plan, and then these other the comprehensive plan is then buttressed by these 6 different master plan updates. And then that's going to be managed by the core management team, which will include myself and Amy Hazy with RDG, as well as the staff that we'll be interfacing with, and then also council. And then the steering committee is a very important component of that because it makes up many community members. So how do we go about that? So we've taken a look at this, and RDG and Amy Hazy and I put our heads together, and really I want to give the credit where credit's due, is because she's done this many times, and her experience has led this approach because of its success in the past. So we want to develop a comprehensive plan with a committee chair, and that committee chair, I believe, has been identified as Mayor
Elizabeth
McKinney. Elizabeth McKinney.
I don't know why I
Okay.
couldn't say it.
We haven't voted on it yet,
No.
though.
No.
Okay, right. So that's why there's no names here anywhere. So there's a steering committee then that will be underneath that, and that tends to be between 10 and 13 people. And that steering committee is truly the voting body of this strategic council, which encompasses all of these elements here. And the important thing here is this: we often find that when we have a lot of people, much more than 10 to 15 or 10 to 13, people just become less engaged. You think, oh, well, there's 10 other people there, so if I don't show up, that's not a big deal. But what we really want to do is avoid that and keep people energetic and part of the entire process. So then that steering committee will oversee a subcommittee, and then that subcommittee is part of the entire strategic council, which can compromise between a total of 40 to 45 members. So we have one here as the committee chair, 10 to 13 from the steering committee, and then 24 to 30 roughly, it could be more or less, which would comprise a total strategic council between 40 and 45 members total. So we're really expanding the amount of input while at the same time trying to organize it in such a way where the value is most received. So let's first look at the steering committee. The steering committee really needs to ensure that that flavor and feel of the comprehensive plan reflects the desires of the community. One, it needs to review all the master plan's recommendations, because we've got 6 to 7. We need to ensure that those master plans work as a family of documents and that they're reinforcing and supporting each other for that plan. We want to make sure that the steering committee, those 10 to 13 people, are making sure that the transportation is lining up with the water and that there aren't any conflicting recommendations, because there's going to be a lot going on. And then finally, we want to make sure that the steering committee represents the diversity and variety of the Norman citizens. So what we've done is we've looked at what has typically been a really good breadth and depth of a steering committee that's been successful in the past. So we have 2 members of the city council that we'd like to be on this committee. We have 2 members of a planning commission, or not just maybe a planning commission, but maybe other commissions within the city, because I know that the planning commission is taxed. There's a lot that goes on with them. Somebody within the community that has experience with economic development, somebody with the university, a major employer, an advocacy group such as, is that out? Like the Bicycle League of Norman. Bike Pass could be a really important part as we look at the transportation master plan moving forward. Are there any builder or trade groups, plumbers, mechanics, electricians, or constructors? Developers are an important part when we think about how a community develops. And then human services are those people that are in the community, social workers, et cetera, that deal with some underrepresented populations. And then a young professional. We have a lot of young professionals in our community. I think one of the aspects of this master plan is to draw and keep young professionals in our community. So we want to see that they're also represented as well. So what we've preliminary talks with Mayor Heikkila about is, let's find people that fit into these roles. Let's find people that, I think that you have all talked about a pool of people. So how can we fit people in roles where their experience and their expertise truly brings value to that diversity and that variety of the city of Norman? So then let's move on to the subcommittees. It's a very similar approach. In talking with the utilities folks, they want to combine their sanitation, water, and wastewater master plan into one committee instead of having 3 separate ones. We have a transportation, stormwater, and then a housing subcommittee as well. And so similarly, what we want is to confirm that we're going to have some of that consistency, is we want 1 or 4 of the steering committee members to actually be the subcommittee chairs. So we have 4 of these folks that'll sit in each one of these lanes to help steer those committees. And so then they can also be some people to filter up to the steering committee, again, to make sure that all the messages are heard consistently across the various plans. And so we've also gone through and said, okay, we want to make sure that these are relevant with the individual staffs as well. So we have a utility staff here for the water and wastewater and sanitation. This says utilities, pardon me, it should actually say public works instead of utilities on the transportation. And then same thing for stormwater, and then a community development staff. Jane or one of her staff members would be there. And then additionally, we thought, okay, where would these subject matter experts within the community or other people that have experience maybe in the wastewater or water field that would be passionate and really bring value and knowledge to those subcommittees so that you all are getting a real good, clear idea about what this master plan and how it could be shaped. And so we want to take that approach with each one of these. We have, again, utilities, transportation, stormwater, housing, and each one of these different subject matter experts, as I set up and identified. And that doesn't mean they're necessarily an expert, they have a degree in it. We don't necessarily want that, right? We want people that either have passion in that field, have experience in that field, or can speak to it with their current job description. So that is the sum and substance right now of our approach with the subcommittee or the steering committee with subcommittees, and then all of these together would convene the strategic council for the entire master plan. I'm sorry, the comprehensive plan.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Francisco, do we, to me, in terms of original structure back when Norman Forward was being assembled, did they put together a committee framework that has similarities to this?
At the steering committee level, yes, but it was a much larger steering committee that didn't function very well. It was too many people, actually, in my opinion.
There's also some precedent set at the state level. I was appointed by the governor to a Water Quality Management Advisory Council because I fulfill an environmental advocacy group role. But there's also those for industry. There's also a slot for geology, agriculture, etc. And there's 12 seats, and each one of those 12 seats have to speak to a certain specialty. And so we took that same type of approach in what Mr. Francisco just spoke to as we developed these various subcommittee roles and chairs. So what we're trying to do is identify a need and then fill that, and then you all will fill that need with the expertise and experience that we find to be necessary to help those master plans be successful.
Councilman.
Okay, so with this information, now that we have our, contractor, the people who are going to manage kind of the comp plan, this is something that looks very different than what we have thought about and discussed before. And so I'm wondering if it makes sense for us to be able to digest this information and to get a really good understanding of how we're going to change and where we're going to move stuff. I think that's not something that we're going to be able to, figure out tonight.
I agree.
So my personal recommendation is that we talk about the Strongtown stuff, get that moving forward, and then allow us time to really be thoughtful about how we're putting all of these people in the right places and the subcommittees and all of that. I think we need more time.
I would agree, and I think that what we need to do is do a Saturday morning where we can sit down. Brenda doesn't have to be there if she doesn't want to.
24/7, right?
Yeah. No, but it just, we need a time where we've got more than just a couple hours. Because these people, we picked on the same, I think it was brilliant the way you picked up on it. I picked those people by skill, round peg and a round hole kind of an idea. We're keeping with that idea, but now we got to figure out who the pegs are and what holes we put them in.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to take some time. Again, Strong Towns, we've got a deadline, we got everything, we're pretty much done with that.
Right.
And I think we could get that done. We could take the comp plan part off, and then perhaps you've got time to be able to sit down, and if we did a Saturday, it could be a Friday after, I'm just picking a day that I think most people can go. My time's more schedulable.
Yeah, I understand. I'm just thinking about too, massive comprehensive nature of like what we are trying to do, I think we have to be really strategic. And I think that this, to me, makes a lot of sense in the terms that like we need people specifically focusing on these different master plans and how those all work together and kind of filter up. So like I really appreciate like the forethought in how this is getting structured. And I think this will also help our community understand, like we had a very like, oh, we need people for the comp plan, but now we can really say like, this is what this is gonna look like. You're going to be on a committee working on this specific thing. Like we can give information to our residents that is much better than what we've been working with to this point. So, yeah.
And think about all the other plans that OU has, Moore Norman has, the public school system has, the state may have, that we need to make sure that we're not stepping on their toes by doing something. And that's coordinating, as we just saw in the presentation for that 13.3 acres. And that's just, we get those conversations out, doesn't mean we have to do anything. It just means we're talking about it.
Yeah,
So
I just want to make sure
agree.
that like all of our staff have the people that they need to move all of this forward, and I don't want to rush that.
Yeah.
And I will say to, excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Please.
Oh, I was gonna say, we did talk with the various directors and got input on this as well, and who the different type of folks that we might want to fit in here. And so that comes from their knowledge about who's been impactful and has brought good value to some of those discussions in the past as well. And so we really tried to take a very holistic view, I guess, when we tried to put together something for you all to consider.
Yeah, I'm also just throwing my name out there. I would love to be on the steering committee since they said 2 council members.
There you go. You're number one.
So I would love to.
Were you next?
I think that.
A quick question, getting in the weeds on this. So do we anticipate that we'll pull the 10 to 13 community members from this list and then basically move the remainder to the subcommittees and then backfill it with additional names?
I'm thinking we're going to need a lot more names. I think we can pick from these for these steering committees.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Okay, yes, we're on the same page.
You have all the applications
Yes.
that
That's
I've
why I was-
received
Yep.
on your iPads in a
It's right here,
folder
if you want to pick 'em.
alphabetized. They're alphabetized.
Well,
We
and
do have some more that have come in, and I think.
I stuck them in there.
Oh, you did? Okay. And so there's some good people, some people, Mr. Ladner just wants to be on Strong Towns, that's fine. I think I need to list that curfew on applications coming in. Because now that people can see this, they can go, hey, I'm a DEQ guy. I want to be on that. And they, like you say, they understand what gear they mesh with.
Yeah, what they're
Well-
being asked to do.
And now that we have the ability to put some more names on here, I know we were trying to keep these 2 committees separate, but I personally would love to see if there was a few names that had some crossover between the 2 committees.
The only reason I don't disagree, but I'd rather not do that, is to give everybody an opportunity. If we got a subject matter expert that we need in both, of
Fair.
course, that makes sense.
Fair enough.
Councilmember Tortorella? did
No,
you-
he asked
Okay.
my question, and I want to follow with you. You know, if we want to share this with the community, can we have a copy of the slides be put
Yeah,
on the?
I asked Bryce to send them to me.
And
Yeah,
then
we'll make
sort of a
that-
PR thing too, so people
yeah.
understand, well, how that
We'll,
goes.
we'll make the tweak on the utility staff to public works staff in the transportation arena. We'll send that to everybody on council, but in the conversation with our consultants, kind of that realization that picture is worth 1,000 words. And to be able to boil it down to, boom, this slide, this is the type of background we're looking for, just to make sure we've got all the bases covered, and that goes miles and miles to make your job easier too.
And,
So,
and my thanks to you for taking the thoughts and putting it into a picture we could see.
Pictures are worth 1,000 words.
They are in this case, I'll tell you.
And so we and I don't know, I think sometimes in March, maybe, is that right, James, that we're shooting for?
End of March, 1st of April, and we gotta get scope back from you.
Right, for the actual contract.
And I gave that to him.
Well, thank you all.
Thank
And
you.
thank you, I have to pick up my daughter, so.
we didn't want her to hitchchike home. No.
She's at Oil and Clay, so.
All
right.
Maybe I just didn't get it.
All right.
Strong Towns.
I think we were at consensus last time we talked about this, and then, so I think that one's pretty,
We're good to go?
Well, what we'll do then is that's the one we'll
Split it
prepare
out.
for final adoption on the 28th, and we'll rock and roll.
appreciate that.
Thank you.
Same order, same
Yeah, I didn't see anything that gave me any real heartburn.
Okay.
I mean, at least not enough to make me
You've
think
got
about it.
one added name, that Mr. Ladner on the
Yes,
bottom.
yes.
And you can look up he's a geologist.
Okay.
And he's lived in central Norman for, I forget what he told me, 30 years, 40 years, long time.
Who? What?
He's from Ford.
His application's in your folder. I forgot to add his name on here.
No, that's okay. How does it?
Ladner,
L-A-D.
Ladner.
NER.
Okay.
And,
I guess not to get too far in the weeds about this, but, I mean, we did have a conversation about how many people are from Ward 3 on this, like they're highly overrepresented. So
I'm still looking at round pegs and round holes.
I get it, but it still gives me heartburn on maybe some of the things that they're gonna tackle, are probably not necessarily in Ward 3.
Sure, most of them are.
Right, and that's my point.
I do have one that I messed up. Corey Godine is Ward 7, not 3.
Oh, yeah, that's,
Fourth from the bottom.
Yep, okay.
did you have a question, Councilmember?
Yeah,
Or Steve?
I could send it to
that's a little
you
better.
in private, like, if necessary, but I do definitely have concerns still that, like, I'm willing to count Derek Rosendahl as a Ward 7
Oh,
person,
yeah.
even though he lives in Ward 4 now, but he lived in Ward 7 for 15 years.
I've lived in 3 wards, and still have one.
Yeah, me too.
So I'm willing to count him, but
5.
not having a actual Ward 7 resident on the comp plan is definitely problematic for me.
Do you
I
see?
do have a proposal to address that, though.
Okay. Oh, you do?
Yes, and it's
Well, maybe hear it?
it's a person who would be on Strong Towns, but I talked to her. She's a police officer
Oh, okay, you want to do that?
about moving her to comp
Comp
plan and just moving her over to that.
Terrace.
Yes. And then there's one on Strong Towns who doesn't have, from Ward 7, that doesn't have an application in. And so I was going to swap him out with
And
someone else.
that reminds me,
Take one.
Amy Serrato, we're digging around for her and we cannot find it anywhere. So if would you ask her to send that again?
Hey,
I
Brenda.
think I've seen it.
So she applied online too, like Tassie
Yeah.
did. So did
I've
we just
gone through-
misplace it?
No,
We've
I've
gone-
gone through, I did
yeah.
find Tassie's.
Did you find Tassie's?
But I've gone back
So we're
to-
missing her application then?
Yeah, we know that all the stuff about it and we're keeping her name in the place, but it's just a matter of getting that.
But
It
Heath
might have
Fleet,
gotten
I've
lost
gone
in
back
that
through.
transition between Muni Code and whatever the other thing was, or somehow it's not there.
Just to make it formal, if
And-
we need to
and-
resend the link to
I'm
you
doing
to
it
get
now.
to her,
I'm gonna do it
perfect.
now. so.
And for all of us, if a person comes up, have them send their application in. The reason I'm big on the application is because if I know proving to you is easy, but somebody comes up and asks a question about why is so-and-so on there, I can pull the application, I can say, this is why this person is there. They have this
Their
skill.
background.
No.
So,
Yeah,
but I
absolutely.
understand your thing on Ward 3. I don't know how to fix it.
I mean, now that one has been
Really,
corrected,
there's
that's
7
a little
from Ward
better.
6
Okay.
on there.
Yeah.
And so we're deciding now to.
I'm not looking at comp plan right now. I was just looking at Strong Towns.
Yeah, and we're deciding to move Derek from,
Keep him on there.
keep him in Strong
And
Towns,
I will agree to count him as a Ward 7
guy.
person.
And then we
And then
put,
add
He was wanting to get
Tarek
Tara.
Casillas.
He
And
wanted to
then
move Tara
those would be
over.
2 reps from Ward 7. I'd be fine with that.
and then do I have an odd number still on comp plan? Well, we'll probably have more
Well,
on
we'll
comp plan.
have
We
to
can
change.
figure.
So wait,
Yeah.
where are we putting Derek?
Stay on comp.
Comp plan. Okay, perfect.
Taking Tara Casillas from Strong Towns, and I called her and talked to her, and she was all for it. Moving her to comp plan.
Okay.
And then that would satisfy having an actual Ward 7 resident on the
Okay.
plan, and then
Okay.
counting Derek as a.
I'm
And
good.
then did you say something about
Yeah.
moving Anna?
Yeah, he's okay with that.
Oh, that was his student?
Yeah, and then move Hannah.
One of the
Anna.
people in Ward 7 doesn't have an
Okay.
application, and I don't know who they are. so-
Heath
Yeah.
Tate?
Heath, yeah. We'll trade Anna for Heath.
Okay.
So that would have
And then if you do need
Anna,
Brian
Corey,
Mitchell-
and Jake Flaggart as the Ward 7 people on Strong Towns.
And everybody's cool with that?
I'd be fine with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
good to
Thank
go.
you, Council.
We are going to expand the comp plan.
Yes.
Yes.
Numbers.
Gonna bring
Yeah.
more bodies.
The original bunch we'll keep there as the steering committee heads or pick from them to be steering committee heads unless we see any difference. But the numbers will change from 23 to 40, whatever the number was.
More hands will make for.
So how many total on Strong Towns?
There's a bunch of strong towns. I don't know the
Yeah, it was
numbers.
23 plus on the
23
leadership group and
yeah.
13 to 15 on the action group.
It's
That's mostly the staff side. just
Did I number them on the
bringing
bottom?
That being
Not there, but the second
22.
set.
I could,
Okay.
I can get.
There'll be 23 here, and then these people, so 23 and 5, 28.
For sure.
Okay.
So far, yeah, well, 29, because Ladner went on there, so
Yeah, I think.
it may end up to be
yeah.
30, and we may pull in another person that wants to do that. But now that,
Contract.
it's just real hard when they keep on pouring in. Where are you gonna put them?
But I think we'll have some more clarity after we have the kickoff event next week too. that Some people.
And
might
that hasn't
decide-
been publicized.
I've seen
Oh, have you?
Facebook posts and emails about it.
Okay,
But it came
I,
to my personal email, it didn't come to my council email.
well, we might get that out, the Strong Towns meeting.
Oh, I've seen so many emails. I can't even keep up.
Yeah, next Monday at 6:30,
Yes.
27th.
Jane says that she won't be bringing the contract with Garver to council until probably the first meeting in April, the last meeting in March. So it gives council time to meet one more time and go over.
Perfect.
If you want me to print your application so you can look at them easier, or how you want to do it.
Okay, question about messaging to residents about accepting more applications for the comp plan. What does that look like? I know, I'm sorry. I don't want to make it hard for you.
What it would look like to me, if I can speak for you. Since you
I
got
just want
your
to make sure
hands
that
in
we're
it.
all on the same page about how we're messaging this.
If they put in an application and on the bottom of that, they write comp plan or strong towns, so that I know the difference between what they're interested in. If they don't care about which one, they just want to be part of the process, they can tell me both.
Well, yeah, they're in the drop down now,
Yeah.
so they
No,
can
they
click,
can, yeah, they
pick
can
one of
select
them.
which one. It's, yeah, it's a part of the drop-down menu, but I think
I'm just saying
I will
we should
have the
probably have a
slides
cutoff.
tomorrow, and I think that you can show that they're looking for expertise in these areas.
Yeah.
I think that will help.
Can we have a cut-off date when we need to have applications in? Because that's something that I don't think that we did well in the first round. So if we can message that you have to have your application in by X so that we can look at all of the applications that we have in a comprehensive
We got a
way.
little bit of
30
time.
days,
When do you want to meet?
30
Yeah.
days from.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
Strong
think
Towns is
we'll
good.
close Strong Towns.
Comp
This
plan.
is still
Yeah.
on, we want to close it.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes, and then
So-
comp plan is the only one moving forward, right, as I understand, because we're
Yeah,
gonna
shall we
vote
pick
on.
We'll
Pick a
probably get
Friday,
some hybrids.
pick a
but-
Monday.
EOB of next Friday as
So March the 24th
For the comp plan.
for the
Comp
cutoff.
plan cutoff.
Okay, March 24th,
Hard.
hard stop on receiving
For the
applications.
third time.
For the
Yeah.
third time.
Meeting.
I mean, I can send you that one slide.
Yes.
If you're going to put something somewhere, then you can send that
Yes,
and say these areas only.
March 24th. Okay,
Because that
thank you.
gives us 2 weeks.
Well, it gives you,
Technically, to
it
get
gives you,
Until the first council meeting,
that gives us
in
April
April.
11th.
Yeah.
But that's
sprinkled.
literally a week because we get the agenda going the week before, so.
when would you?
So maybe
when
we
are
want to
planning
back, are you
meet
saying
the
we want to
first
back it
Yeah,
up?
I think it's too
When are you
big a
planning to
window.
meet the first time?
Let's take one more week off that, back it up 1 week, Brenda.
Okay,
March
17th?
March 17th.
Yes,
State patties.
that feels good.
Yeah, spring break. and
Okay.
it's-
from O'Connell's.
Because you're going to continue to want to meet and talk about them again.
Yeah,
One thing that I would like to still maintain is that they're Norman residents.
of course.
They have to be.
Yes,
Legally.
agreed.
Legally.
Well,
So,
that they live here. 'Cause you
and
can-
they live here,
Yeah,
yeah.
because you can have property, but I don't know that that's.
We had one
Yeah,
like that.
we want
And so-
people to live
Right.
here.
Brenda did a wonderful job ferreting those addresses out.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
Thank you, council. Good stuff.
okay. Now, wherever I am, we have discussion item number 2. Discussion regarding,
Mayor and Council, Lisa Craig, Grants Manager
Hi, Lisa.
from the Planning Department. And I want to thank you on, not just myself, but on behalf of the Planning Department for giving us this opportunity to bring the staff of Neighborhood Alliance back to you since they were here previously. I'm not for sure, other than Stephen, if any of you guys were actually on council at that time.
I think Liz and I were actually.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
I voted for
Yep, same here.
Big turnover, and Neighborhood Alliance is one of those organizations, although the city of Norman funds their activities here in Norman, it's not things you really hear about every day unless you're participating in the activities they provide. Usually doesn't show up in the manager's report. It's all done within the community with the support of the city, but Neighborhood Alliance undertakes these activities themselves. Myself, I've worked with them for about 15 years now. They've been an amazing resource for me in my career with the block grant program. I'll call up Georgie and I'm like, I just don't know what to do about this. And she always has words of wisdom. I am very proud of the activities that they have done since they have been under contract for us. We've had great participation, even with COVID. We've had to pivot several times because of various, outbreaks that happened. But this time, I want to introduce Georgie Rasco, Executive Director of Neighborhood Alliance, and I'll let her introduce her wonderful staff.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for allowing us to come and talk to you once again about our program, the Neighborhood Alliance of Central Oklahoma. I will introduce the staff that we have for the Norman program. We have with us today Leo Zambolo, who is the Norman Community Organizer for the program. Unfortunately, Kimmy Diedrich has COVID and couldn't be here tonight, but she graduates in May with her Master's in Regional and City Planning from the University of Oklahoma. And then I'm the Executive Director of Neighborhood Alliance, and I have been there for 22 years. Neighborhood Alliance, our mission is very simply to create safe, attractive, and healthy neighborhoods. This is our staff that's here. You'll notice Helen Palmer is with us here in the back room tonight. Other staff could not come tonight because we are doing a program for the police department in the city of Oklahoma City, and 3 of our staff are there that we contract with the police department, and we contract with the city of Oklahoma City as well. And another one of our staff members is on a panel for Black Lives Matter at the OU Health Science Center. So that's why it's Leo and Helen and I here tonight. We're going to show a very short video for you that tells you a little bit more about who we are. This is our mantra.
I don't know if the sound needs to be turned up.
Yeah, you have to turn it up and then start it over.
I think the sound has to be turned up on the.
You almost had
bars.
it down there.
No, it's full. It's
Oh,
fully
okay.
up.
Oh, is that as loud as the sound gets?
I think it might have to.
sound up.
Who's brave?
Is he back here? Somebody back here.
Surprise!
It's on there.
no.
That's why I was saying Brenda turned it on.
Move. Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We believe in our community.
Did you want to start it?
We believe in block parties, front yard watermelon feasts, neighborhood Easter egg hunts, and reuniting neighbors with their lost pets. We believe in protecting property values and creating great places to live, work, and play. We believe in knowing our neighborhood police and fire officers by their first names. We believe in front porches, sidewalks, and neighborhood parks. We believe that you do not have to move in order to live in a better neighborhood. We believe that corporations are just waiting to be asked to help neighborhoods and local citizens thrive. We believe that our #1 crime prevention tool, is to create a more social neighborhood. We believe in educating ourselves so we can be better, more involved, and more informed citizens. We believe our mayor, city council, and municipal employees all want what we want, a great city filled with great neighborhoods. We believe with support and training, all citizens have the power to be great neighborhood leaders and to lead positive change. We are the Neighborhood Alliance, and since 1977, we've believed in safe, healthy, and attractive neighborhoods for all.
That is very simply how we believe. We've been an organization for 46 years, a nonprofit. We were started by Cliff Hudson, when he was the CEO of Sonic, and several other Oklahoma City leaders as a tool lending library. They thought back then that if we had a place where people could come and borrow a chainsaw, borrow a lawnmower, that they might be able to keep up their properties a little better. It got too expensive legally, legally, liability-wise, to loan people chainsaws. So they had to change their mission. And from there, it just grew into first working with just the historic preservation neighborhoods. And today we work with over 450 different neighborhoods in Oklahoma City alone. We are a 501c3. We have a very diverse board of directors, and we've contracted with the City of Norman since 2021. As you can see here, we support about 600 different neighborhoods, which equals about 225,000 households, and we have about 350 crime watch patrol programs in the city of Oklahoma City and Edmond.
And how many in Norman?
None here. We don't have a contract with the police department, and that has to be something that is done in cooperation with the police department. This is very simply our organizational structure.
So we identified 4 stages of the neighborhood life cycle: growth, stability, decline, and renewal. It's inevitable for a neighborhood to go through decline because voluntary associations are usually volunteers. So people either get too busy, they go into different passions. So that's when we come in and find those officers and leaders to create the next phase of renewal, which leads to growth again. Our renewal is simply finding the new leaders and officers to take those positions on the board of a neighborhood. So our programming, this is one of the quotes that we really like. When strangers start acting like neighbors, communities are transformed. We believe in neighborhood organizing that we work with all stages. Again, we work with all stages of a neighborhood, as you saw in the life cycle. We set up officers, leaderships. We meet the neighbors where they are in their neighborhood, boots on the ground, get to know them, and we understand their needs, advocate for their needs, and allow those volunteers to grow into their officer positions. Here's just a little graphic we used as what goes into neighborhood organization. It's supposed to be a little house, it's not showing up on here, but you see municipality on the roof. We believe that it's very, very, very important to know that the neighbors know, the residents know that the city is a partner with them. They are here for them, and we want to create that partnership with them. That's quite simple. We're not here to, we're not here to go in and tell them what to do. We're purely here for an asset for them, and to be able to help them. So since we've come to Norman, we've had a few planned out community workshops that are on the contract. And we've held one already, private roads and waterways. That's a pretty good success. That's where we have experts from Oklahoma area come in and teach residents on how to maintain private roads, who to call, what to do, as well as waterways as well, the environmental aspect of that. So as you see, we have a lot of planned out events for the year 2023.
Can I just put in here real quick? The Norman Streetwise was a success last year and already planning again for this year. And that's a thing that we've copied from the city of Oklahoma City that's been one of our best sellers, if I can say that. And it's kind of the speed dating of City of Norman. It's where we encourage the city to, we work with the city. We set up over at the library round tables with a different department head or person from that department at each table, give an overview of what the city is, how codes work, and then kind of blow a whistle, and residents that are attending after they eat dinner, we serve food at all of our workshops because food creates community. And so then after we blow a whistle, you can go and sit at one table, talk to that person and the people there about their issue. Then when we blow the whistle again, 20 minutes later, you can change tables or stay at that table. And we do that 4 times during the evening. So you can go around and you could have 4 different conversations with different department heads. At the end of the evening, we're having to shoo people out the door. And as a community organizer, that's music to my heart to see residents sitting in there having civil conversations with their department heads.
The neat thing about legal issues for HOA as well is that we have an attorney that strictly deals with legal issues of HOAs. That's what he masters in. And he holds presentations for HOAs, and they're able to go in there, anyone's able to go in there and learn from what he has to say.
And I want to talk briefly about the focus groups. When we first got the contract, we held focus groups right away in the city of Norman. We wanted to make sure that we weren't coming in and telling people what they wanted. They clearly told us, do not Oklahoma City or Norman. We heard that very clearly from the 3 different focus groups that we had. And we understand that. We understand that Norman is a unique city. It is not Oklahoma City. We've had neighborhood associations since day one in Oklahoma City, just about. You have some very strong neighborhood associations here as well. So our goal is to come in and learn more about what the residents want and to provide that for them, working closely with Lisa and her staff, anybody else on the city staff that has an idea for a workshop or something that we can provide for the city.
One of our very first projects here in Norman was the Mid-Main project, where we handed out to original town site and First Courthouse little informational bags about our project. We included little coloring pictures of Norman landmarks, and we added some crayons in there for the kids. Nice little sheet of helpful numbers, including all the council members' numbers as well as the mayor's, posted on for easy access.
Public record.
Public numbers.
Pump the brakes there.
We delivered to 810 houses, and this resulted in what Lisa said, the largest CDBG meeting to date, which we held a few weeks ago.
How many people showed up?
To CDBG.
CDBG, I think we're about
How many people?
27, about 27.
27?
At about 30.
Is it about 30?
Normally, we're struggling to get 10 o'clock. And so we had a great turnout.
A lot of interaction too, is very progressive. One of our biggest projects coming up is the Norman Neighbors Academy. This is an all-day event that we host at the library, the Central Library. We are currently partnered with the Norman Library, so we have that connection already where we have those rooms and advertisements. We have breakout speakers for each room that people are able to rotate around, meet and greet with other nonprofits, as well as the nice thing about this is that neighbors are able to come at their own convenience. It's all day. You can stay the whole day if you'd like, or you can pop in throughout the day.
And it is a Saturday.
And of course, free breakfast and lunch, free food provided. And one of the biggest things we believe in is that we believe local people have the solutions to local problems. Therefore, community partnerships are vital to strong neighborhoods. We already have a list of partnerships that we have reached out and made. As far as the city of Norman, as far as the partnership we have together, we want to create that partnership with the city of Norman and the neighbors in the neighborhoods. That's our number one goal, is to be able to create that partnership.
Councilman.
Do you have a question? All your photos, they got some badges on, and something you had said earlier is that we don't have a
Right.
Partnership with our Norman Police, is that something we've approached? Have
No, we haven't yet.
Okay.
I've talked with your chief several times. He's very, very supportive of the work. He knows Chief Gorley that we know very, very well in Oklahoma City, and he's heard our good works from there. So I don't know what that looks like in the future. The only way that we can do the police work that we do currently in Oklahoma City is through the contract that we have with them, because we can't step out and say we're public safety experts. We're not. We can learn from the police department and your police department and help them figure out how they want to reach out into the community. We do know, though, that the number one reason voluntary neighborhoods are organized is because of crime. They typically have some kind of crime going on. It can be very petty. It can be more disastrous. Then when they arrest the 14-year-olds that were out on spring break, for breaking in or getting into cars, then they want to disband. They organized for that, and now they want to disband. So our job is to step in there and say, hold it, there's way more you can be doing. Look at what you solved now. Let's keep going and keep organizing and seeing what else you can do to improve your neighborhood.
Yeah, so like I said, we're partnering with the Norman Public Library. That's where we host a majority of our workshops. Local schools, University of Oklahoma, such as the big event, we help promote, get people, we hear from residents, maybe the elderly or people with disabilities who need help cleaning up. We will help push that request to OU in the big event and get a group of people together, and we will supervise that and allow for a cleanup. And then local businesses. We actually have Sarita Wilson here from Yellow Dog. I've been grateful to know, and
Sarita, would you like to come on up?
and we built a partnership with them. And she's just going to give a few words on local communities and the partnership between local businesses.
Well, as you guys might be familiar with me, I am a former council member, a former Ward 5 person where I was living in a very rural setting. But as pandemic came through and all the things that were happening at that time, I ended up moving into town to a very vulnerable neighborhood with the original town site. I live in probably the first house, I don't know that I have proof of that, the first house on Comanche in original town site built in 1894. That part I do know, thanks to the CDBG work that was done in prior years. Surveys and that sort of thing to find out, they actually had to go dig in to find out where, when, because it's on fire maps, but the courthouse burned. Anyways, that's a long story. But as a person who's very, very connected with the community, very connected with city, municipal goings on, I struggled to get connected as well. But these guys actually reached out to me into my neighborhood during that thing that there was a picture of them going to the doors, and I was like, well, what is this magic? I like it because we know as council and other members of the community that a lot of times there's a disconnect between maybe what city staff is doing, what elected officials are doing, what other staff members like police and fire and that sort of thing are doing in the community. And I think this group does a really lovely job of bringing all of that together. And we know that Norman needs some cohesiveness, and I think these guys are doing a good job of that. I even started a Facebook because I'm like, hey, there's not a Facebook group for my neighborhood. I'm that person. So I started a Facebook group to help. But we also have a coffee shop, Yellow Dog Coffee Company, and Annie's Rough House, which you guys are probably familiar with. We've invested significant amounts of money of our own money because we want to be part of this community, and there are other people doing that too. Like, for instance, Midway Bob. If me and Midway Bob can get together and do things, that bring the community together rather than, maybe it's not part of a city council function, or it's not a police function, or it's not a fire function. I love that. I love what I'm seeing happening at our coffee shop with people in our community. We have people that walk there, with people that drive and meet their wife that walk there. We have a lot of physical activity that's happening, whether it's come have a cup of coffee, come listen to some music, or arts and those kinds of things. So if we can have more places like that in our community, and if these guys can help find those holes of
of what needs to happen. I love it. So that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, Yellow Dog is a perfect place to build that partnership as it's right across from the neighborhoods we're working with. Sarita lives in the neighborhood, as she said, her and her husband. So we're so happy to get that partnership going. And the locals love it, obviously. I mean, every time I go in there, it's hard to find a seat. So. And,
Hearing the fire code.
So as part of our mantra, good neighbors make great neighborhoods, and great neighborhoods make a great city.
It was very nice today, earlier, listening to your other speakers, because over the 22 years that I've been with Neighborhood Alliance, and when I started, it was just me, just one person. We've worked with Plan OKC and RDG very, very closely in getting the Plan OKC together. We worked with ADG as well on the MAPS programs, and that have been so successful. We know, and I think you know too, that neighborhood leaders are the ones that go to the polls. They're the ones that vote for you. They're the ones that vote for bond issues. They're the ones that vote for increasing and improving their city. So if we can get neighborhoods sort of demystify the city and help them understand that the city really does want to work with you. You may not have reached the person one day when you called about a pothole that was having a great day, and they might have said something they didn't mean to. That doesn't mean you need to turn off the city altogether. And so our job, one of our biggest jobs, is advocating for neighborhood leaders, teaching them so that they can advocate for themselves. We don't come to you and tell you what a neighborhood needs. That's not Leo and Kimmy or mine job. Our job is to empower your residents through an organization in their neighborhood so they can compile the needs in their neighborhood and better emphasize that to you as their council people, who in turn can bring that to your city. So that's what we are. That's who we do. We'd love to continue our partnership with you. As you can see, we've already sort of pre-planned what we can do for the rest of the year. So do you have any questions?
Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. 2 points, I guess, is I do think the partnership with the police department is absolutely vital to, one, help the police department make those better connections with the community that they serve, and get the message out about what is the police department doing to address some of these issues that neighborhoods might be concerned about, and provide a better avenue perhaps for the neighborhoods to talk directly with the police department about those issues. So I think that is an important aspect, and it seems like you've had a lot of success working with the Oklahoma City Police Department over the years, so I would be hopeful that we'd be able to work that out here as well. And then the other thing is, one of the major reasons I supported this contract was the neighborhood issue where there is a defunct HOA, or there never was one because it's older, whatever it may be. And for example, in Ward 7, I've got 4 neighborhoods that do not have an HOA, but have issues, but don't have any kind of organization or know what to do to try to figure out how to address them in their neighborhood. And then I have 4 other neighborhoods in Ward 7 that do have an HOA, but when I follow along some of their their neighborhood groups on Facebook or whatnot, I see a lot of questions or comments about people being like, where do I send the HOA dues? What is this going towards? Who's the person in charge of the HOA? Or how did this issue start in the neighborhood before we moved in? And so that's been kind of the main focus, or one of the main reasons I supported the contract, was to try to help address those types of issues with our neighborhoods. And we've had to experience that on council, where we've had neighborhoods that had real serious infrastructure problems that they didn't know how to address, didn't have funds to address it, and were coming to the city, asking for help.
Right.
And then a lot of neighborhoods, again, not knowing who to ask, like who at the city is the person I should talk to about this, or who's in charge of that. And so that's been kind of my big hope about this program for Norman, is helping a lot of the neighborhoods that want to get more organized as far as the function of their neighborhoods, or old HOAs that are defunct and current residents that don't know what to do to even get something started again. So
And that's exactly what we can help you with and have already helped you with. And we've had really good attendance at the legal issues taught by Matthew Winton from the Norman Legal Issues, as well as Norman residents are allowed to go to anything that we do in the city as well. And that's already happened. Several of your residents have come there for some of our workshops. Remember, there's two kinds of neighborhoods. There's a homeowners association, which is a mandatory association, that if you live there, you have a set of covenants. You typically pay dues, not all of them do, but typically you do. And you have some kind of common area that together you're responsible for. State law says that after 20 years, that you have an ability to re-up that HOA or to vote it down. If you don't vote it down, it stays in effect. One of the things that I've really worked with the city of Oklahoma City is hold them accountable. If they have an HOA and they have a detention or retention pond or a lake or something or a creek bed that they're responsible for, and they haven't had that 20 years where they voted to disband, then hold them accountable if they're not taking care of their property. They have no choice. When you move into an HOA, I tell people in my training, congratulations, you just bought a 3-bedroom, 2-bath with a pool and an attached small business. Because your HOA is a small business. And you have to be, I just did a training this morning for 100 realtors for RE/MAX, for CEUs, and I told them, I said, you've got to be responsible for teaching your residents that move into HOAs what that responsibility is. They don't have any clue when they come in. So it's a joint responsibility. The other type of neighborhood is strictly voluntary. If they had covenants, they were so long ago, they're not in existence anymore. And we do want them to have some kind of a structure so they can have a bank account. We want all neighborhoods to be incorporated. It's a simple process. We walk them through it. They're incorporated as a not-for-profit at the state of Oklahoma. And that means that they can then have a bank account if they choose to. If they're going to raise any money at all, they need a bank account. They can't put it in each other's, and it's somebody, just good old Bob over there, look, he's good and trustworthy, we'll put our money in his bank. No, you've got to have your own association bank account. And so between those two, my first step in your situation would be to work with those non-defunct HOAs and help them figure out, are they really defunct? We had a situation in Oklahoma City, and I'll just share this real quick and then open back up for questions, where a neighborhood just an HOA was developed. They just put their head in the sand. My brother-in-law said that if we don't vote for officers, we don't really an HOA, and they believed them. It was 110 homes. They had a creek bed that ran along the back of their neighborhood. So for about 8 or 9 years, that creek bed was never, ever maintained. It started flooding the neighborhood downstream. That neighborhood came over to them, forgive my voice, I have allergies. That neighborhood came to them and said, you've got to maintain your creek bed. You're flooding us. They again, we don't have an HOA. It's not our responsibility. The city has to do that. And the city said, no, that's not our job. So after they worked with it, the only thing that could happen was that an attorney was brought in by the neighborhood downstream. He was able to sue because they weren't incorporated. Every single one of those homes got personally sued for not maintaining their HOA responsibility. They were quickly on the phone with me then. How do we get organized? Well, you have to pay up your responsibilities here first. And so each one of them had to pay about $10,000 to really solve that whole lawsuit. So they learned very quickly. You don't escape it. You don't just bury your head and not have an HOA. If you moved in with those amenities, you're responsible for those amenities as well.
Questions from council?
I mean, I don't want to brag about Ward 6, but I'm bragging. We are the HOA ward for sure. No, I would like to continue this, and then on my way out in the last year and a half, kind of get you all in there. I mean, it's just very, very specific. I know all of the HOA people.
Good. We need
very
that
well.
list from you then.
Yeah, so I'd like to get connected and get you in there and
great. We'd love to
keep that going because they are strong.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
So I represent Ward 2, which is a lot of old infrastructure, and so we don't have the HOAs.
Yeah.
We have a few, right? But not as many as Ward 6, and so it's definitely something that I think is valuable for my ward, as Councilmember Holman was talking about, and I love what you're doing with Original Town Site and First Courthouse, and that's the type of stuff that I think Ward 2 could also really benefit from. Like my house in my neighborhood where I live was platted in the 1950s or before the 1950s, so I have the original covenants of what was in place back then, but I don't even know that it really had ever had an HOA, and so there have been some conversations in Ward 2 about some people trying to get this community together and have conversation. There was a meeting put together over the fall in Rotary Park where they invited everyone that was kind of adjacent to Rotary Park to kind of come and participate. They had like a little cookout potluck and
Great
just kind of
first
having
step.
conversation. Yeah, and they did a little like a door prize giveaway so people could sign up and get stuff. So it's pretty exciting. I think the potential for what this can look like, and I think the conversation around how to develop leaders in our community so that they can address the issues that they might have with the city. I've had a number of things happen in areas where they're adjacent to commercial and commercial changing, and how that affects traffic and people and all of that within front of their homes. And so there was a lot of conversations about who do we contact? What is the process for this? How do we work with city staff? So I was doing a lot of that, liaison work. But I think that if we have trained leaders within our neighborhoods that are strong, that can filter through with us as a continued liaison. But there's already mechanisms in place for our residents to kind of have those conversations. So I just really see y'all as kind of a tool organization where you're providing all of those resources, the knowledge, and like you said, not to come in and tell our residents what to do, but to empower them with the tools necessary to create neighborhoods that they want to live in and that they currently live in.
Very
So
well said.
completely supportive of the work that
totally,
you'll do.
Totally going in and making the neighborhood as sustainable as possible until we have to come in at that renewal stage again, where again the volunteers fall out. But it's all about sustainability, making them advocate for themselves and giving them the tools to do so. I always see myself as kind of a bridge between the residents of the neighborhood and the city of Norman. So.
Teaching them how to be their own advocate at the city. We're doing our job, and Kimmy, if you don't see us up here, if you see your residents coming here and knowing how to talk to city council, knowing how to talk before the Board of Adjustment, knowing how to do those systems, then we're doing our job. Helen.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for presenting tonight, and also for that CDBG meeting that we had a few weeks ago. That was really well attended. I was going to ask, I want to proceed, but also, what does the Mid-Main project look like? Is it something that gets done this year or has to be done multiple years?
We better let Lisa, because we're Lisa's tool with that. We're the ones that are going to help her with it, but she's in charge of it.
So, 18 months ago or so, we as a staff, we had an amazing intern that had this vision that was incredible, so good we hired him, but then he got a better job. Anyway, but the original town site neighborhood, which is primarily south of Main to Alameda, Porter to 12th Avenue, and then First Courthouse, which is Robinson to Main, Porter to Alameda. A good chunk. Those have been 2 CDBG neighborhoods. And when you look at the big picture of the Porter campus redevelopment, the possible Griffin redevelopment, and then you think about the redevelopment in Center City, that neighborhood, those 2 neighborhoods are primed for redevelopment. They have some of still the most affordable housing in Norman. primarily lower income neighborhoods, but they're stable neighborhoods. And so what we as a staff wanted to do was to put a little extra attention on those two neighborhoods to maintain that affordability and to get them a little bit better organized, because not that necessarily Center City is a bad thing, but that's not the location for that kind of development. And so what we want to do as a staff is to organize those neighborhoods. It's about 50-50 owner-renter, and then be able to come in and proactively have some pulleys and levers to help preserve those neighborhoods in the encourage appropriate redevelopment, I guess is what I'm saying. And so the CDBG program will be working on our nickel with Neighborhood Alliance to help with those specific neighborhoods being organized. They'll still be doing their general stuff for the citywide, but we're just going to carve off a little extra effort for those two neighborhoods and show them some love. So, and it's just now kicking off, so.
We know it's important to Lisa and her staff, and it's very important to us too, that those residents that aren't in those neighborhoods that aren't necessarily used to being at the planning table, with all of this that's going to happen in their neighborhoods, they need a say. They need to be able to come forward and say, this is what we really need and what we want. That's where you get buy-in from your community. We used to have a fabulous program that I've talked to Lisa about that I would love to have again in the city of Oklahoma City, where we had small grants for low to moderate income neighborhoods. The city put a pot of $180,000 out, and we administered the program. And low to moderate income neighborhood could apply for up to $10,000 for a project that would increase community in their neighborhood. They did identity signage, a piece of equipment in their park, things like that, nothing on private property. But then they had to do the project as well. They had to get the permits. They had to go to the planning commission if it required that. They had to go get permission from the parks department if it required that. One of our council members from the Horseshoe at the city once said in support of that program, the fact that we get ornamental lighting on the other end of this grant is just a cherry on top of the cake. What we really get are citizens sitting together at their breakfast table talking about a combined project or plan that they can do for their neighborhood and learning how the city works. So they're much more apt now to understand why that pothole isn't filled the day after they call it in, because now they know the process of what things have to go through and permits have to go through. It's a beautiful program, which that program in our city grew into what is now the Strong Neighborhoods Initiative, which is a multi-million-dollar program that we're very involved in there, that just has 3 low moderate income. They put all of their money now into individual neighborhoods and then kind of spreading it out. Any other questions?
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll take 5 minutes and let them get reorganized, and we'll go on to item 4.
Radical sidewalks.
Driving today, I was like, coming for that one.
Okay. Us back to session for item number 4, discussion regarding the appointment to fill a vacant Ward 1 council seat. Voters did it.
Yeah. He was did. So
That's about it.
It's pretty cut and dry.
I agree. Cut and dry. He won. People spoke.
Okay, we would like to do that next Tuesday.
So basically, that will be at the beginning of your agenda. The first item after the roll call and the pledge will be to appoint him to fill the remainder of the term. Once that's done and voted on, then he will take the oath, and then he will take his seat, and then we'll move on to the rest of the agenda. I mean, he will take his oath again in July, just like you know, for the next term, just like you did, and just like Brandy had to do for those partial terms, but it's kind of the plan moving forward.
How are we handling committee assignments? Is he just basically taking what Brandy had, or are we going to give him the opportunity to choose, or?
I don't know.
No
Not that
choice.
far.
I'm going to stick with what Brandy had as an assignment.
Just want to make sure that we fill holes.
We fill all the holes.
Yeah, right.
And my big thing is that Ward 1 has been without representation for 2 meetings, and that's horrible. And now we can at least we can fulfill that. We might want to rethink that for next year, you know, those kinds of things. Different skills, different things that come up, but let's address that, not this time.
Fair enough.
Anything else council needs?
What
Well,
if we
I-
vote
should-
no?
If you vote no?
What if we say no, Brenda? Brenda, you're gonna hit us?
Yeah.
You're gonna throw something at us?
Then we'd have to do a committee.
The
Well,
citizens of Ward 1 said yes, so I don't know.
as our charter amendment hasn't gone into effect though, where we have to do the.
No, AG hasn't signed that, or signed it, given it to the governor to sign over, so.
I guess typically in the future, we would have to then do the committee and appoint
Yeah.
somebody.
Say you've already lost 30 days.
Yeah.
Change ended
And-
up only being a clarification that you would be appointed to finish the term. It didn't codify the committee, so you still have that 60-day shot left, basically.
So it makes it easy. And I'm glad they'll have representation and doing stuff. So, any more questions, thoughts?
Good meeting.